United States Constitution mandates that a census take place every 10 years to count the entire population. That information is critically important in determining political representation and funding for vital services. The state's demographer, Susan Brower, joined me to provide an update on Minnesota's efforts. Census forms need to be filled out by the end of the month, a month earlier than had been originally scheduled. This week, Governor Walz sent a letter to the U.S. Census Bureau asking that the original October 31st deadline be restored. That said, how are Minnesotans doing at getting those census forms filled out?
So Minnesota has done very well in terms of its self-response. So that just means that people have taken the forms that they've received in the mail or the notices that they've received, and they've taken it upon themselves to respond. We lead the nation in terms of self-response, and about 3/4 of Minnesota households have responded that way so far. The Census Bureau then follows up with the households that haven't responded, and we're still kind of working through that self-response. We're not as far as maybe we would hoped, and not as far as some other states in that part of the response. And so overall, Minnesota is at 97% responded or counted. That sounds like a really high percentage, and it is, but there's still 157,000 households yet to count in just about 2 weeks. So while it sounds very good, there's still some urgency, quite a bit of urgency to get those last households counted.
Well, let's dig into those numbers just a little bit, because according to a recent KSTP story, some areas of Minneapolis and St. Paul have a response rate of less than 50%. And as you mentioned, Minnesota is historically, near the top at doing census and voting and all of those other, civic engagement activities. But then on September 1st, the Star Tribune reported that the state has fallen to 11th right now. So you mentioned that 150,000 that really need to be counted. How do we get to those people?
So these are the folks who have presumably received multiple responses and are uninterested or unwilling to respond. They're really the hardest groups to count. And so it takes multiple in-person visits. It takes skilled census takers to explain to folks why it's important and why they're doing this, and that the information is secure and confidential. The areas that still need to be counted, there are some that are in urban areas, but I would say looking at the state as a whole, the areas that concern me the most right now, in addition to some of those urban neighborhoods, are areas in northern Minnesota, very rural areas in northern Minnesota. A number of tribal areas still have very low response rates, and I think it's just going to take time to reach some of those groups that are historically undercounted by the census.
Now, does a person need to be a citizen or have a green card or have some other kind of legal status in order to be counted in the census? And can any information that is gathered in the census be used against someone who is, say, in the state illegally?
So the census counts everyone regardless of legal status. So citizens, non-citizens, people who are authorized to be in the US. It is just in the Constitution as a count of all people. It doesn't specify anything about legal status or whether they're permanent residents. It's just a head count of every living, breathing human being. And data can't be used against folks, but I understand why they would be concerned that that's the case and hesitate to answer. There are specific laws that protect data that's collected by the Census Bureau so that they can't be used in a court of law. They can't be shared with other agencies such as ICE. Whatever goes into the Census Bureau stays in the Census Bureau for 72 years, which is roughly a lifetime. And only then can individual level data be released.
What kinds of outreach are underway right now to get this count done? And has COVID-19 had an impact on the 2020 census? And those outreach efforts, do they end September 30th if that deadline is not extended?
So the community efforts to reach people and let them know about the importance of the census are still going on. There was a bit of a pause during the period where everyone was figuring out what was going on with COVID-19, but those are back up and swinging. There's also an effort by the Census Bureau, as we talked about, called non-response follow-up, where census takers are going door to door. So there's kind of the community-led effort and then efforts by the Census Bureau to go door to door to do that counting. I'd say COVID has had an enormous impact on the census. There was a prolonged period of time where census takers were originally scheduled to go door to door, and they needed to hold back until early August when it was safe to go out and enumerate again. And it's also been difficult to hire census takers. A lot of people, particularly retirees who were planning on being census takers, didn't feel comfortable, with good reason, going door to door during a pandemic. So that has slowed the process down. There's also been kind of a back and forth yo-yo with the deadline of the census. We had an October 31st ending in our sites for many months, and at the beginning of August, that was turned around to September 30th, which was a surprise to a lot of folks and caused kind of a lot of stir and questions about whether the count can be completed in the next 2 weeks. So yes, it's a huge impact by COVID-19.
Briefly, before we have to go, what are the ramifications of not having an accurate count?
It's really hard to overstate how important this census is. I would say the biggest ramifications are going to be a distortion of political representation. We won't have the same political representation that we would have if we had a thorough and complete count. We're at risk of losing our 8th congressional seat. That is up in the air, kind of in the whole series of questions, the cloud of questions about how this count is being done. And then there's all kinds of funding that's tied to this count. And so, any question about whether the count is fair, accurate, complete will tie back to whether funding and representation is fair and accurate. And so there's a lot at stake, and there's really a lot of confusion going on right now just about whether this count can be done.
Susan Brower, I want to thank you so much for your time. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.